Stop waiting for success to find you. It doesn't magically happen. Build it with clarity, structure, and strategy on purpose. Hello, IOers, and welcome to the Industrially Organized podcast. Today, I have a super exciting guest with me, Brittany Wilson from Career Candor. And today, we're going to talk about navigating layoffs, RIFs, and from the employee's standpoint. Brittany has an outplacement firm and amongst other things that she does in her company. And so, Brittany, I'm going to give it to you. Why don't you tell us about yourself? And I'm curious, what led you to create Career Candor and focus on and focus part of your work on helping organizations and employees navigate layoffs?
Mhm. Yeah, first of all, Nicole, just thanks so much for having me here today.
I'm
I'm
so
just so
excited.
appreciative of you inviting me into your community. I'm so
Of course.
thankful.
Yes, I'm excited. I think this is going to be a really interesting topic.
Yeah.
I have been through, the layoffs, the rifts, and the
Mhm.
terminations, and it's a tough thing.
Yeah.
Especially for the employees, and the
Yeah.
experience with it and kind of leading up to it if they're, kind of expecting it, the rumors and all that stuff. So I'm super excited to bring this to my listeners and yeah, talk to you and bring you on and get your expertise.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nicole. I do agree. It's a big hot topic, the topic of layoffs. I feel like it's been this constant topic, especially since 2020, 2021,
Yep,
especially with
sure.
all the COVID layoffs. But then
Mm,
also, we get into the big tech layoffs that happened in 2022 and
right.
2023. And now it just feels like layoffs are just a constant workforce strategy now.
Yeah.
And, layoffs have been a huge part of my career, of course, in the past several years. Similar to you, Nicole, I have an HR background. So I worked in HR
Yep.
and learning and development in many industries and really developed this niche more in that career development space. So people
Okay.
would come to me for advising and coaching. So much
Yes.
so, I did land a job as an internal career advisor at a large Fortune 500
Um,
company.
okay.
And it was a dream job, very much like what a university would have for their
Yep.
college students, is what this tech company had for their 100,000 employees. And
Oh,
it
wow.
was, yeah, it was a very unique setup, and I loved it
Hmm.
so much. And we had a new executive come in that said, "Hey, any program that isn't making us money is getting cut. And by the way, Brittany, you're part of the team to help us sunset the career development team." So I had to help sunset my own team, and it was
Ah,
absolutely devastating, right? And then I look
yes.
around and I'm like, "So guys, where am I going to go?"
Right.
And of course, eventually it led to my first layoff. And I was mortified, right? I was that person that identified themselves based on their career, right? I
Same.
really held a lot of my self-worth in my career.
Yeah.
And so honestly, to say I was devastated was an understatement. It was a super dark time for me. Now, as part of my separation agreement, I was given outplacement services. And
That's
so
great.
for the first time in my career, I was going to get my own career coach, and I was very excited about it. But that I quickly became disenchanted. Uh,
Oh, with the
my career
career coach.
advisor, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
my career coach, they were not very knowledgeable of the job market, right? You could tell that
mm,
they were really overwhelmed with a lot of the clients that they had on board. And he didn't understand what I did, right? It was a misfit, right?
ah,
And
dang.
it
Yeah.
real, and then I found out how much they charged my employer for outplacement services, and I was irate. And I said to my colleague, I was like, I can do this a whole lot better for a whole lot less. And she said, you should.
Yeah.
So she
Yep.
planted quite the seed, but I was far too afraid to go the entrepreneurial route. So I jumped right back into corporate.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
and I was there for about a year, and I just kept thinking to myself, you know what? Like, did I miss my boat? Did I miss my opportunity? And it was finally at that year mark that I said, you know what? If I'm still thinking about this at a year, I'll give my notice. And pretty much to the date, I gave my notice to go off and try my own thing.
Good
And
for
that
you.
was 2 years ago now, right? That I left to go full time into Career
Mhm.
Candor. And now I've been able to hire back a lot of the same people that I worked with in that career development team.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Brittany, that's such an amazing story.
Mhm.
I love hearing that.
Yeah, it's super hard because in the moment, right, you get laid off and people are like, Brittany, things always happen for a reason, and it's
Ugh.
really hard to see that light in all the darkness.
Yes.
And you
Yes.
could not tell me, oh, there's going to be something better that comes out of this because
Right.
I really didn't believe it. And, looking back now, I see had I not gotten laid off, Career Candor wouldn't be where it is today, right? We wouldn't be focusing on
Absolutely.
providing much better services than what I had received and what so many others have received. But
Yeah.
it is a really transformative time to be laid off, to really give you that blank slate to think through what is it that I
Yes.
truly want. And sometimes you
Yes.
make the right decision and sometimes you don't, right? And
Yes.
so
Yes.
it's a very, very transformative, like blank slate moment that we do have to take
Absolutely.
advantage of because how often do
Absolutely.
we really get a career break?
So I
Yeah.
love that story. I love that you took the adversity and you just ran with it and was amazing, making it better, a better
Mhm.
experience than you had. I love that. That's similar to my story,
Mhm.
as well. Dealt with horrible leadership, horrible guidance. I
Mhm.
was in HR and I needed help with my own HR, and I didn't have anybody to go to.
Yeah.
And I sat back and was watching so many poor decisions. I was watching leadership making horrible choices. And I was like, I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
just done.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go offer better. So, what I want to ask, so we hear the words layoff, we hear the words reduction in force, we hear the words termination, and sometimes they're used interchangeably, right?
Hmm.
So, what I would like for you to answer for the listeners is what is the difference between those words? And particularly from the employee's perspective, excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of weird information going out in the media, especially last summer, there was a lot of stuff going out about performance-based layoffs and all these types of
Oh,
things. And
yes,
girl,
yes.
like I will die on this hill. There's no such thing as a performance-based layoff. There really isn't. So really like termination, right, means your employment is ending, right? It's
Done.
either in the HR world, right? We have voluntary or involuntary
Yep,
termination. You
yep.
left on your own or you didn't leave on your own.
Right.
And so that reduction in force, right, is typically where layoffs are really tied together, right? So
Right,
reduction in force is okay, like the business is spending more than it can, right? Hopefully the business has gone and cut many other expenses. I will say, even
right.
my employer, they were very transparent about it through the whole process. It was about a year worth of cutting expenses and travel
Wow.
and professional development opportunities and all this
Yes.
type of stuff to keep us from spending so much as a company. And they said, hey, we're doing this so that way we can hopefully prevent a reduction in force in the future, right? And so,
Transparency is key,
mhm,
with everything. So
yep,
kudos to that company for doing that.
yeah.
Because then you know, I hate this phrase, Brittany. I hate this phrase. It's not personal, it's
Oh my
business.
goodness. Yeah. Yep.
Stop saying that. Now, if I get why people say that from the company's perspective, the sentiment is it has nothing to do with you. We literally don't have the money, right?
Yeah.
But the person receiving that lame
Oh,
statement,
yeah.
it is
It's personal.
completely personal.
Absolutely.
And it makes you feel like teeny tiny, teeny
It
tiny,
does.
even though
It
the
does.
intention is not there. Don't use that because it's incredibly personal. You can
Yes.
say the same sentiment, but still recognize that this is personal.
Yeah.
So I hate that phrase. So I'm so glad to hear that your company was transparent with you and
Yeah.
not just bloody, whatever. This is what we had to do. I'm moving on. Right.
Yeah, they were, I will say my HR person that was in the meeting with me, right? It's very hard because the manager reads a script, right? And my manager, she was a very authentic human being. So you
Yeah.
could tell it just killed her to just
Oh,
sit here
yeah.
and read a script.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I understand from an HR perspective why the script exists, right? But, there was an HR person there too. So they were very good at not being like, oh, this isn't personal, right? I did
Right.
ask, like, hey,
Right.
why and whatnot. And they said, look, it's not
Yep.
performance related. We
Hmm.
just identified that we do not need this role. And unfortunately, you are in it. Right. And so
Right.
I think well, I talk about this with my clients all the time of it's not personal, but it is. Right. It's like layoffs, they really aren't supposed to be personal motives, right? They're really supposed to be, it's based on a role, not the person in the role, right? And
Right.
that's why I say there's no such thing as performance-based layoffs too, because if your organization is doing performance management properly, they are notifying you throughout the process,
Yes.
like throughout your employment, regardless of a reduction in force is happening,
Yep.
regardless of anything, right? That they keep notifying you of, hey, you're meeting expectations or you're not meeting expectations.
So for listeners who may not be familiar with this term outplacement,
Yeah.
can you explain what exactly is it and how does it support someone who has lost their job?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So, really, outplacement is here specifically to help you after you've left the organization, right? We
Right.
are here to help you out of the organization, help you get placed in a new one. And so,
Yes.
ultimately, what it is it's career coaching, resume reviews, interview prep, all this type of things, but all paid for by the employer. So, as part of your separation package, your separation agreement, you may get outplacement services. And there are some large firms out there, right? And there are also some smaller, mid-sized firms like Career Candor too, who are
Hmm.
here to help those organizations and more importantly, help those people who've been displaced, right? Who have lost their job to no fault of their own. A lot of leaders, a lot of executive teams, they feel terrible about this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I personally have never worked with a client who just doesn't care, right? Every
Well,
single
thank
one of my
goodness for that.
clients, yeah, every single one of my clients, they love, like, they truly care about who they're
Yes.
letting go. They
Hmm.
know that Steve's dad has cancer, that Sally's
Right.
mom
Oh,
is moving in with her, that, George's kids just started preschool and, they know all these things. And so they truly do care about the people afterwards. And
yeah.
it's hard to just when you lose your job and when you leave an organization, it almost feels like you leave a country, right? Or you leave a city, right? You lose
Hmm.
those connections a lot of
Yep.
times and you have
Yep.
to maintain those connections afterwards. And
Yep.
a lot of this leadership team, like they recognize, man, like these are truly people and this is a personal matter. So they purchase outplacement services. So while the organization can't always help you find a new job or the people within the organization can't, what they do is they outsource that. So they'll hire outplacement organizations like Career Candor to help with those terminations, whether they're, a lot of the time the involuntary terminations, right? The ones where people are leaving when it's not on their own. And while most of the times we support organizations who are doing layoffs, we do have several circumstances where we've worked with businesses who use our services even in any involuntary circumstance. So if someone is
Wow.
fired from the organization, regardless if it's a layoff or not, they will give outplacement services to help that person find their next job. So it's really making sure that you have a partner to help you in that process. It's basically you get your own personal career coach to help you through your job search.
That's awesome. And I know, so I'll go ahead and tell our listeners now, you and I are going to come together again And
Yes.
we are going to talk about this topic, but from the company's perspective. We're going to talk
Hmm.
about, the company doing these layoffs and RIFs responsibly and kind of how to handle it as a leader, as maybe
Hmm.
even HR person. And that's a whole nother perspective
Oh,
that you
yeah.
and I said we need a
Yeah.
separate episode on that. One thing I wanted to ask before we talk about how people can prepare for layoffs, I am curious.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts or experience with the current labor market here?
Oh,
We're in
girl.
2026, but I'll take it back to like 2025 and 2026. Have
Yeah.
you noticed, are there more layoffs? Are there more RIFs, in comparison to other years?
Hmm.
Um, the other thing with that question is, are there any specific industries that stand out to you?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a loaded question, Nicole, for sure.
Yes,
So
I know, and I'm
it's
sorry about that.
no,
I've
don't
been asking that
apologize.
question. I've been asking that question to a lot of my
Yeah.
HR colleagues.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's a
Hmm.
loaded question. There's answers for every part of it, right? So, as far as like, okay, how are layoffs going right now? Are there more? Are there less? Here we are. We're in the
Right.
summer of 2026. I will say typically summers are usually a lesser time when it comes to layoffs, right?
Okay.
It's usually a slower season for the vast majority of the reason of like, okay, like shareholders are not breathing down, executives' necks during summer times, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's on vacation. It's hard to align and connect people. So there's
Yeah.
not really a sense of urgency to conduct layoffs during summers all too often, right? I will
Hmm.
say, in December of 2025, we saw the most amount of layoffs that we had since the 2020-2021 space, especially in a one
No
month period. So
kidding.
we tend to peak in the end of the years. And
I
last
hate
year, I think
that.
with all, the organizational efficiency, the operational efficiency things, okay, that's the tariff situation, the
Yeah.
supply chain, like it was just too many AI, and data centers and all this stuff. There was just so much socioeconomic circumstances going on that many organizations were pressured by either shareholders or stock
Mhm.
dropping or something of the sort to make a tough decision at the end of the year. And so, what I will say is, layoffs they're coming to a nice like steady place as it,
Okay.
I do
Yeah.
think every layoff can be prevented, arguably, but I recognize that like, it does have to happen in some organizations, and so really we are at a nice steady place from a layoff perspective.
Hmm.
Now, as far as different industries, yeah, the industries vary time and time again, right? So it's really hard for those for those professionals who are in you know who are in more of the shared services types of
Yep.
roles, the corporate roles, right? Think marketing, think
Yes.
human resources. If you're not
Mhm.
perfectly tied to a revenue sharing stream, right,
Yep.
it's easier to make that cut because the role is seen as a pure expense, right, rather than an
Yes.
investment, and that's really hard.
Right.
um Whereas, there are some industries that are really low in talent right now. Engineering, for example, doing real well. If you're in engineering right
Yep.
now, you can breathe and get a job offer in your
Yes.
inbox, right?
I,
So same thing with trades and similar roles
right.
to that, right? Those
Yep.
those roles are doing really, really well right now.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
it is a lot more of those corporate roles where companies they scale up, they need people to put in systems and processes, and now they realize, oh man, we have too many systems and processes. Let's scale this down a little bit. Oh, well, if we do that, we
Right.
don't need the people.
The way people look at absences or times
Mhm.
of not working is drastically different from
Yep.
even when I started in my career, and I'm in my
Yeah.
40s. And you had to you were a nervous wreck explaining
Yeah.
this, gap.
Yeah. Yeah. The hiring teams, though, they get it.
Yeah,
They've seen it. It's much less taboo today than what it
right.
used to be.
Right, absolutely. So I think that's really important that,
Yeah.
yes, it has normalized layoffs from the company's perspective, which
Yeah.
is a good thing.
When
Yes.
people see a gap, like I will say, even myself, when I was laid off that many years ago, right, during the big tech layoffs, few people asked, so Brittany, why are you looking for work, right? Like, oh, why
Right.
did you leave your last company? What
It
they
was
typically
assumed.
ask
Right.
is, why are you applying for this role? And that's a different
Right.
type of question, right?
Absolutely.
You don't have to
Absolutely.
talk about your layoff then,
Yes.
right?
Yes. So let's get into an employee kind of preparing before a layoff happens,
Oh, yeah.
because gossip is always rampant,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's part of, why HR employees have positions is because
Hmm.
there's just so much gossip. So most people don't necessarily prepare for a layoff, right?
Yeah.
My question is, what should every professional be doing now, even if they feel like their job is secure?
Yeah. Yeah. So number one thing is to just start like updating that resume. Number
Yes.
one, right?
Yes.
Start updating that resume because that resume, it's going to be based off your experience, your successes, your accomplishments. And what happens a lot is I see people who've left their company. They're like, I don't remember these stats. I don't remember these things. And roundabout numbers are also okay. So first things first, start pulling some of your results, start pulling some of your stats. What are some achievements you had at work? How many
Yes.
people were in your organizations? How many people did you oversee? Thinking about scope and successes is really important. The other thing to start doing is start networking outside the company.
Yes.
That's one thing I did not do when I was laid off, or even before I was laid off. Like, I loved where I worked. Loved it.
Yes.
I loved the people I worked with. I loved my teams. And when I got laid off, I looked around and was like, I only know people here. That's
Yeah.
it. Like, I don't know people. The only way I know people outside is if they've left, right? That was
Yeah.
all it was. So, I think big thing is to really get involved in your local communities, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about professional development associations near you, or even online professional development associations, right?
Yeah.
Trying to find different ways to connect with people outside of your place of work. So when you do leave, first of all, like you have a bigger network to leverage
Yep.
to help you find jobs. But second of all, you don't feel so alone, right? That's a
Right.
huge thing, is to not feel so alone and feel like you're absolutely crazy. Because I will say, I have also survived layoffs too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've
Mm-hmm.
had other people leave an organization after I've stayed. And it's super hard for the surviving employees as well. Not nearly as hard as the people who've been laid off,
Sure.
right?
No, you
But
have guilt. Yeah.
yeah, you have
Yeah.
survivor's guilt. That's
Yep.
literally what it is. And
So true.
it's super hard because they almost create a space, right? Like that
Yeah.
person who survives, like they have to compartmentalize
Yep.
because they're worried about themselves, they're worried about their families, they're worried about you, they're worried about their coworkers. And it's a lot to worry about. And they're like, well, this isn't fair, right? Like, why
Right.
did they have to go? And
Right.
so those people, whether they mean to or not, sometimes they take a step back because they just have to have that emotional distance because it's just a lot, right?
Sure. Got to do
And
what you got to
so
do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's perfectly acceptable, perfectly reasonable. Everybody copes
Mhm.
a different way. It's
Mhm.
just makes it, humans are complicated, right? We are
Yes.
complicated creatures. And so it makes it hard when you're being laid off and you're underwater and you're trying to pull for people to talk to. And sometimes some of the people in your organization aren't don't seem to be there when you expected them to be. And
Yes.
that's a really hard time. Whereas if you are networking with people outside your organization, you may tend to have a mix, right?
Yeah. Right.
The other thing to
Yep.
do too is if you're worried that your organization is starting to do layoffs, right? You can start thinking about, okay, like, have recruiters reached out to me in the past? If they have, let me
Mhm.
just start like engaging in some
Yeah.
interviews. The worst that could happen is you withdraw your application, right? You go, you
Right.
know what?
Yeah.
Sorry, this didn't work out. It is what it is. And it's okay, right? There's
Right.
no hard feelings. One thing I learned from being laid off is always be looking. And that's a super
Yes.
hard thing to hear
It
because
is.
job searching is exhausting, but
It.
always having your foot in the job market is really helpful because if anything we've learned from all these layoffs is no job is guaranteed, not a
Yep.
single one.
So true. And I tell my people always, always, always tell my clients, I say it everywhere I possibly can, document your wins along the
Hmm.
way.
Yeah.
Document your wins because You will forget, especially if it's in a
Oh, yeah.
situation when you're laid off and you have to come back and say, oh, well, what did I do successfully?
Yeah.
Especially when you're in such a heavy place,
Yeah.
you feel very much, you know, not so good and not so good at your job, even if it's,
Exactly.
not intended, that's just where you are. And so finding that positive can really be hard. So
Yeah.
document your wins. But then
Hmm.
also, when you have your documented wins, when you're doing interviews, have those available. And when you're asking
Yes. Yeah.
questions, boom, 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 you can answer those questions successfully. So I love that. Document your wins,
Hmm.
and you are so right about your network. Um, it is it is so important to, nurture that network before you're in panic mode.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
when you're in panic mode, people don't know you necessarily if you
Yeah,
haven't nurtured
exactly.
your network. And so your network is not robust enough to help you. It's not
Yeah.
robust enough to support you.
Yep.
And so you absolutely need to, nurture that network along the
Yes.
way. Another comment I
Yes.
wanted to say too, always be interviewing yes, yes, and more yes. I say that too. I've had
Hmm.
so many conversations with people just in my HR career, even,
Yeah,
corporate career and now, that it never hurts to apply.
absolutely.
So, worst case scenario, it's, you get an interview. Okay, you get an
Yeah.
interview. Take that interview. And then you get a second interview. Okay,
Yeah.
take the second interview. And then you get the offer. You might actually really like that offer. But you know
Exactly.
what?
Yeah.
If you're like, I actually like where I'm at better now, you can
Yeah,
say that
that's
as
okay.
well. But you never know what's out there. You never
Yeah.
know how your career can just skyrocket if you
Yeah.
just stay so closed and focused on this.
Yeah.
You have to give yourself permission
Yeah.
to look elsewhere. It is okay.
It's perfectly okay. And
Yeah,
just exactly to your point, too, you might get all the way to the end, realize it's a great offer. You might even get part of the way through and realize, I'm not really feeling this job. And that is totally okay. Partway through the
exactly.
interviews is to say, I'm not feeling this. Like, here's why. And I'd like to withdraw my application. First of all, that
Yeah,
job might come back and say, actually, we can change some of those things, like, especially if it's comp or something
that's
like
so
that.
right.
So if
Yes.
you are still interviewing and you're like, I still don't know if it's a good fit for me, you can say that to the recruiter. You can say, look, I'll be honest,
Yeah.
like, I can, I have a job right now. I don't need to leave. This job is really interesting to me, but I still have these questions unanswered.
Yep.
Who can help me answer those questions to help me
Yep.
figure out if it's a good fit? And they would be happy to help you because,
So
they
happy.
want someone to take this job. They want to
Yes.
fill this requisition. They want to fill this job opening. And so if answering your questions helps them either weed you in or weed you out, then that's something that they're going to do.
That's so right. That is so right. And again, I have lots of experience with talent acquisition. And
Hmm.
let me tell you, recruiters can tell when you're just desperate for a job.
Oh, yeah.
And I know that I mean, you're going to be if you're laid off. It's
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
inevitable, right?
I talk about this with my clients a lot. It's like when you lose your job, you got to start at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
Maslow's hierarchy, right? The bottom of that pyramid is all about, okay, do I have safety? Do I have security? If it rains and storms at night, do I have shelter to give me, right?
Right.
And if the
Right.
answer is yes, great. Then you can move up to the next thread, which is more of like that financial and economic security. Can I pay the bills? Can I pay the mortgage? And when we're laid off, that part is often no, right? And
Right.
sometimes that bottom tier is, oh my goodness, I won't be able to have a house if I can't pay the
Yes.
bills, right? I won't be able to
Yes.
have my apartment if I can't pay. I live in a city with none of my friends and family nearby. I can't just crash somewhere. And so it's really hard because we might have to take jobs that we are just desperate for and aren't a good fit for us. What I will say is, the recruiting, it goes both ways, right? It's not just, oh, do you want this job? Is do you want this job? And is this the right fit for you? you. The
Yes.
employer wants to make sure that, to put in very, very transactional terms, the employer is buying your labor and they want to make sure
Yeah.
your labor fulfills the need that they have. And
Yes.
so that's where some of that fit really comes in. And I've
Mhm.
had clients where they're like, Brittany, I knew I didn't want to work in this industry. I saw some red flags, but I took the job anyway because I needed to make money. And there is no fault for that. Like
No.
I am so
Mhm.
like I really recognize and I resonate with that.
Mhm.
And then what you can do is okay, now I can pay my bills. Now I can have my home. Now I can move up Maslow's hierarchy into that like love and belonging space, into that self-actualization space,
I
into the place
love
where I'm living my values. It's just sometimes we can't climb all the way up the ladder in one shot on Maslow's
right.
hierarchy in one job acceptance. We
Oh,
might have to slowly change. And that's why we see a lot of times people who are currently in their job, they're like, I'd like to have more money. I'd like to, be with a company that more aligns with my values. That's because they're fulfilling the other needs they have. They're getting
right.
paid. They have their house,
Right.
right?
Right.
They like their place where they
Yeah.
are, right? They like the
Yes.
people. Now they can start thinking about what more do I want?
Yep.
And when we've been laid off, we realize, oh, like I'm not going for more. I'm going for like I need the bills to be paid.
Basics.
And
Right.
that's exactly the basics. And so it's perfectly acceptable to accept a job that isn't a good fit for you.
Right.
Just want to make sure from a skills fit, right? You're not lying and that you can actually fulfill it, right? And the goal, of
Exactly.
course, is to stay at a company. But if you find out partway through it's not the best fit, it's not the best fit and you try again.
Okay. So let's get into, okay, you're being laid off
Yep.
and you're in the meeting.
Yeah.
They're telling you. They're telling you
Yeah.
this is happening. Okay. When you're in that meeting, what do you think employees should be asking during that meeting? Even if, you've got oh my gosh, this is actually happening to me, you're kind of having this out of body experience, maybe.
Yeah.
What should they be asking in that meeting?
Yeah. First of all, like anytime you think that you're going to go through a layoff or you're worried that you are, right, to start writing your questions down. Like I got the inclination the day before. I was like, hold on here. I think I'm about to
Mhm.
get laid off. And everybody around me was like, no, 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 you're good. You're good. All it's fine. Then lo and behold, the next day I got laid off. And
Ugh.
I'm thankful I listened to my intuition because I wrote down several questions beforehand. So first things first, right? Again, not to beat a dead horse, right? But like thinking about Maslow's hierarchy, okay, like what money am I getting, right?
Yeah.
When's my
Yeah.
last day?
Yeah. I love that.
What's part of my package? Am I getting a package, right?
Right.
What does health insurance look like afterwards?
Hmm.
What does, okay, like how, and if you could get past those things, okay, what does offboarding look like, right?
Yeah.
Like, how
Yeah.
do I take care of this? Some
Right.
organizations, right, they keep you on, they work you to the last day, right? But
Hmm.
so it's starting to think through, okay, how much time do I have? What do I need? Who do I contact for questions again? Like what phone numbers, what emails should I have right now? Because of course, like if
Yeah.
like I got let go and I was like, I have questions about my health insurance. And I was like, wait, where do I go? Right? Like, who do I ask
Yes.
about those things?
Yeah.
So if you have stock payouts or things of this sort, ask them, what does this mean for my equity? How do I go about that?
Hmm.
Who is here to help me
Yes.
with the unemployment? So really thinking through what are the things that are going to, first of all, help me bring money in the door, right?
Right. Yeah.
What are the things that are going to help me with health, right? And then
Hmm.
really build up and go from there for sure.
And I would always say, too, because it's such an emotional time, just say, if I have questions, who do I go to?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just remember that name, write that name down, write that contact
Exactly.
down if you don't know.
Yep.
Because I think even if you write down your questions, know what's going on, or fully aware are there, you're still gonna come up with something,
Yeah.
right? You're still
Oh,
gonna say,
yeah.
"Oh, I wonder what." So,
Absolutely.
um, now, I want to talk about paperwork here. So,
Yep.
employees, they're in the moment and they feel kind of pressured. Okay, sign here. We've just given you the whole spiel. Good luck. Hats off to you. Um, can they consider and think about signing paperwork
Oh,
before
good
they do
question.
it? Yeah.
Yeah. What you will find is most states, or I shouldn't say most states, but several states will request that you review it and you can sign it, right? And then they typically have 7 days to revoke that signature if you want, right? And change your
Ah,
mind. So there are
okay.
some states that
Yeah.
will allow that. You will see many employers would be like, sign this within 24 hours. Like they're going to pressure
Yeah.
you to sign it quickly.
Yeah.
And that's up to you if you do want to sign it quickly. Many people will say, I'm not signing it until I talk to an employment lawyer. And that is perfectly acceptable as well. I signed mine within 24 hours. I was like, okay, it makes sense. I felt like I got everything I needed and I
Hmm.
understood everything. And I didn't want to negotiate. Like I was okay with my package.
Right.
And
Right.
so if you are unhappy with your package, though, if you want to negotiate something, right? Maybe you didn't even get a package. They were just like, sign this, your job is done. And you want to negotiate for something, you absolutely can. So that's your opportunity to be like, okay, I don't want to sign because I want to talk about X, Y, and Z. Now,
Yep.
you can also choose to never sign. Right. And now the
That was gonna be
downside
my
of that
next
is
question.
if you are getting a package of some sort,
Right.
that means that they don't owe you anything, right? Like
Right.
that they don't have to pay you severance. They don't have to pay for outplacement. They don't have to do these extra things to help you
Right.
out that
Right.
you've declined because you haven't signed. So just be aware of that. If you're ever uncertain, I do recommend talking to an employment attorney,
Yes.
right? To really
Yes.
help you through that process.
Yep.
But don't feel pressure to sign it just because they say, oh, you have to sign in 24 hours or something of this sort. Like if you tell them I'm
Yeah.
talking to an attorney, they'll be fine with it.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, you're just like, "Ugh, okay, you feel like it's inevitable. They're laying
Yeah.
you off. You have no other options. You hope that the company has explored every other option you possibly
Yeah.
can. And so I'm so glad that you said that. It's
Yeah.
an emotional time. Give yourself a minute. Just
Yeah.
ask for it. Even if you're not saying, "Oh, I'm gonna talk to an attorney," just give yourself a minute.
Yeah.
Digest. Just digest it.
Exactly. Exactly.
So let's talk about now, Brittany. Okay, we've been in the meeting, we've been notified that we're laid off. I want to talk about what's next,
Yeah.
the first couple days after. So people often feel pressure to just immediately go to LinkedIn and tell everybody what happened.
Yeah.
Is that the right move, in your opinion? Or
Mm.
should we be doing something else in the first 24 to 72 hours?
Yeah, I think you need to be intentional, right? And
Mm-hmm.
intentional means something different to everyone, right?
Sure.
Some people may be like, you know what, I'm intentionally going to take time off. See you people, right?
Mm.
If you decide that you do want to go the immediate job search route, that is perfectly acceptable. I do recommend taking some time to reflect and think about what is it that I want out of my next chapter, right? Like
Right,
what
right.
specific jobs am I looking for? Because of course, you can retract what you say on LinkedIn. You can change that open to work banner so it attracts different jobs, right? But it's still a brand, right? And so you want to be very intentional about,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if I'm going to go to my network and my public and say I'm looking for these types of roles, right? It's efficient if you know exactly what types of roles you truly want to go for. And so
Right.
the big thing is to be intentional and it's we tend to see it on the spectrum of immediately job searching to I'm taking a break, right? But
Right.
there's space in between there to figure out what makes the
Yep.
most sense for you.
I like that. Yeah, definitely. Um, so we talked about, okay, you're doing the interviews again now. You're back in the job hunt and you get
Mhm.
interviews for a new job after a
Mhm.
layoff.
Yeah.
What is maybe a simple but professional way to explain the layoff, even though the recruiters and companies are much more like, I don't care, right?
Yeah.
It is what it is, it happens. It's not a reflection on you. But sometimes we're embarrassed,
Yeah.
we're a little human when this happens. We're embarrassed,
Yeah.
maybe we're a little bitter.
Yep.
Maybe we're defensive.
Yeah.
So, how would you suggest people explain in an interview what happened at your last job with the layoff?
Yeah, well, first things first, you got to make sure that that's actually what they're asking, right? Because that tends to be forefront of our mind of like, oh my God, I hope they don't ask.
Right.
I hope they don't ask. They could be asking a question, why are you applying to this role?
Right.
That you don't have to talk about your layoff if you don't want to. You can say,
Right.
I've been looking for a role of A, B, and C, X, Y, and Z, and this fit my
Mhm.
needs, right? Like this fit what
Love
I
it.
was looking for,
Right.
right? Now,
Right.
if you have an employer that says, tell me why are you leaving your last job or why are you in the job market, right? That's when you kind of want to make sure that you use a very simple narrative, past, present, future, right? So you want to
Yep.
talk about your past and say, okay, well, my entire career, I've been known and very skilled in A, B, and C,
Yep.
right? Keep it very short. And in full transparency, my
Yep.
current role has been eliminated as part of a company-wide restructuring. But it gave me the blank slate to think about what I want in my next chapter. And what I realized is that I want to take the skills that I'm known for and apply them in XYZ. And
Yes.
that's what led me directly to this job. And in this
Perfect.
job, I know that I can support the organization with XYZ, right? And
Perfect.
so ultimately, you're just really using that past formula to talk about what you're known for and what you're skilled
Mhm.
in, that
Mhm.
present formula, talk about the layoff and talk about how it gave you this opportunity, right? You'll notice in that it was just one sentence of me saying, unfortunately, my role was eliminated as part of a company wide restructuring, period. That's one sentence. The rest of it is focused on what you bring to the table and how they will
Yep.
transform as an organization and as a team because of you.
Yes. Keep it positive. Keep it positive.
Mhm.
Don't harp on the negative. Twist it to a positive, even
Mhm.
if you're screaming inside.
Yep. Yep.
So here's another question I have. What should someone do about former employees, former coworkers, former managers, or clients maybe who may be able to now serve as references or
Yeah.
even introduce them to other possibilities? How
Yeah.
how do we handle that when we're laid off?
Yeah. The perfect situation is that you're actually maintaining that relationship before you need them, right? So
Yep.
first things first, when you've been laid off, right? Humans, we are connectors, right? We are social
Yes.
beings.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it's important to think through, okay, of all the friendships and relationships I've built over my time at this company, who do I want to continue to maintain? Who do I want to
Yeah.
stay connected with? So it's really important to start asking yourself some of those questions. That way, then you could schedule calls with them, make sure you get their phone number, right? Stay in touch with them.
Yep.
So sometimes you find a job and you see someone who you once knew. Right. And at
Mm,
that point, honestly, I always just lean into the awkward, right? I go, hey, it's been a hot minute since we spoke. I'm ashamed that I'm only reaching out to you now because of this, right? There
yep.
was a job at your place of employment, though, and I'd love to have a referral in there, or I'd love to set up a call, one, to
Yep.
hear from you because I miss you, right? And I
Yep.
miss working together. And two, just to hear about your experience at this place or
Mm-hmm.
your
Mm-hmm.
experience with so and so. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's a great opportunity. Again, I just lean into that awkward. Like I just rip the band-aid right
Yep.
off and say, shame on me. I haven't reached out. Like, shame on me. I'm asking you because now I need something. But I want you to know that I don't want that to be it moving forward. Many
Yep.
people are perfectly fine either introducing you to other people
Yeah.
or giving you a referral to an organization because of course they get compensated for that in many circumstances.
Exactly. Yep. Good
There's
point.
nothing to lose at that point.
Absolutely. And I was going to say too, just as a human being,
Mhm.
and maybe not everybody's like this, although I think they should be, as a human being, if someone, even an acquaintance, is like, hey, need a job and I can
Yep.
help in any way possible, I'm more than happy to do it. The humanistic part of me is like, gosh, you
Yeah.
are in a bad state right now. And I am happy to help get you
Yeah.
out of there if I can. So you're
Yeah.
perfectly right. People are more willing, I think, to help than maybe,
Oh, yeah.
we think about when we're in that position, we feel like awkward or, our confidence, is just way low. And
Yeah.
so we're embarrassed to reach out.
Yeah.
But you're so right. I mean, it never hurts to ask. I
No.
always tell people that the worst case scenario is they say no.
Exactly.
But
Or they
what if
ignore
they say
you.
yes?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's one thing because especially with like the open to work banners and things like that on LinkedIn, I get people who
Yes.
ask like, oh, like how, like I just had an HR director in my inbox this week. She asked Brittany, like, does that appear desperate? Like, what is that? And there was this amazing, another study by like Culture Amp. I want to say it was back in 2025. They did a study and they asked recruiters and hiring managers, does someone appear desperate when they have that green open to work banner? And 9 out of 10 people said no. 1 out of 10
I
people
don't
said
think
yes.
so.
And so I'm
Yeah.
like, here's my thought. First of all, who wants to work with the 10%? Say
Amen.
yes,
Amen.
right? Like,
Moving
who
on. I
wants
don't
to
care
work with
about
that?
you.
No, right?
Yes.
But, second of all, like, your chances are they don't care. They don't see
Right.
it as desperate. So you might as well announce it to, each person's different, right? But you might
Yep.
as well announce it and say, look, I'm looking for work and I need your help. And you would be shocked just how much of a community comes together to support you in that point.
So let's jump into the job search.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about how, the market is right now, but any market is hard to find a new job when you're laid off and you need it right away.
Yeah.
How can someone create a realistic weekly, daily job search routine without it turning into the absolutely exhausting full-time job?
Yep.
Or is there even such a thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I have my own opinion, but
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear yours.
Look, looking for a job is a full-time job
It is.
in many situations, right? It
Yes.
really
Mhm.
is. I
Agreed.
was working with another executive recently. She lost her job. And when I asked her, like, okay, how many jobs are you applying to a week? She's like, oh, 5 a week. And I was like, girl, you got to pump those numbers up, right?
Yeah.
Like that is, and she's in a very remote area, right? So like there's not a lot of opportunities anyway. So she's like, I was really only applying when it really fit. And I was like, don't get me wrong. I love that. You should
Sure.
keep that going, right? Am I asking you to apply to 150 jobs a week? No, absolutely not. That's what I did when I was laid off. And it is the opposite
Yes.
advice that I would give anybody. And
Yeah.
I still didn't
Yeah.
listen to myself. The big thing, first of all, is I always say every Monday, right, of that week or whatever day you want to decide is the beginning of your week, right? Every Monday, what I did is I sat down and thought to myself, okay, let me look at this week. What are my goals for this week? Like, is my goal to apply to X many jobs? Is my goal to land X interviews? Is my goal to have X phone screenings? Is it to have X calls with so many people, right? And
Right.
then what that did is it helped me kind of organize week to week because you are
Yep.
going to notice your energy and emotional capacity is going to fluctuate week to week, right?
Yep.
In
Yep.
the beginning, I had a very unhealthy job search process. I was waking up at 2 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. I was dreaming about
Yes.
applying to jobs, had guilt, started applying to jobs at 2 a.m. Like it was just constant. And I applied to hundreds of jobs a week and I was constantly job searching. I felt guilty if I wasn't job searching, right?
Right.
And obviously, that is not sustainable, period. But even then, at some point, you get burnout, right? And at some
Right.
point, I hit a
Yep.
wall and I got burnout. And I was like, I literally can't do anything other than either sit on the couch and eat my bag of potato chips or sit
Yes.
outside and like
Yep.
attempt to read. Like, that's all
Yep.
I could do. And so some weeks were much more lucrative with successes and numbers and stats than other weeks. And so
Yep.
it's
Yep.
really important on that Monday to sit down and be like, okay, what do I have going on this week? In the beginning, the answer is nothing, right? You literally have
Right.
nothing in your job search going on, right? You're just starting at day one. But then the
Mhm.
next week it might be, well, okay, I have a few phone screens, I have a few interviews. So maybe I'm going to apply to less jobs so I can spend time practicing for those. Or, maybe the next week, that's a lot of hours that I've been doing the past couple of weeks. What if I took a couple days off? Like,
Right.
it's a holiday weekend or I want
Hmm.
my nieces and nephews over or something of this sort. So it's really important to sit down at the beginning of whatever you want your week to look like whatever day you want as your first day of the week, and really look out, okay, what are my goals this week? And
Mhm.
keep assessing that each week. And what I would
Yep.
say too is, those goals should be aligned to the 3 things you want out of your next career, right? And that should either be like, ideally it's something searchable, right?
Yep.
Job title, compensation, remote versus hybrid or whatever, right? When I was laid off, I had 3 goals in mind for myself. I wanted to be a manager because I wanted the clout, right? And full, like that was it. Like there was all selfish stuff. I was like, I want to finally be a manager, right? I want to be a
You're right.
manager. I want to be paid more than my last job, and I want remote, right? Like those were the three things I wanted. And so for
Go
the first
girl.
couple of weeks, right, I was like, oh yeah, I want all these things. But you know what happened then, right? A few weeks go by, and I was like, well, if it's like hybrid, it's fine. And oh well, if it's like if I just have a salary match, maybe not total comp match, it'll be fine, right? And so you
Yes.
start to kind of be like, okay, like what really matters to me? And that's
Right.
okay to flex your goals because in
Yeah.
the end, what happened for me is, did I get my fully remote role? No, it was fully in office, but I was able to negotiate hybrid for the first few months. And
Nice.
then on top of that, I was able to get that manager title. I had one whole employee that reported to me, so that was like the perfect step in, right? And then as far as compensation, I originally applied to the role. The salary was going to be higher than what I had salary wise. Total comp it was not going to be. And just by happenstance, I happened to be interviewing with one of their competitors at that moment. So then I was able to leverage that to increase the whole package up, right? And so
Right.
you just kind of assess week to week to figure out, okay, what are my goals for my next career? What are the three things I want out of my next career? And then ultimately, how am I going to break that down week by week, right? And I
Right.
really only look at it in a week's time because so much can change in any
Yes.
week. So just look in a week in advance just to kind of really set yourself up and create that routine for yourself.
And I would completely agree. And that's what I was going to say. You do not want to create burnout because that can
Mhm.
happen quickly. And
Yeah.
then the confidence just goes even further down the drain. My thing is you have to be strategic, and that's
Yes.
not always in numbers. Yeah, my thought would be definitely identify all the things that you said, but break your week up. So your
Mhm.
goals are, okay, I'm going to apply to all of these jobs, but then don't forget about going into your network.
Yes,
Start sourcing
exactly.
within your network or, go to meetups,
Mhm.
touch base. There's all kinds of things that you can
Yeah.
do to kind of give you a wider reach.
Exactly. Find the things that, job searching it's taxing and it is labor, but try to find things of like, okay, I have full control over my career path at this moment, right? Like I really like it's hard to say, like you were put in it in a way that you had zero control, but now you have control over every day. And
Yeah.
so, okay, how am I going to spend those days and what's really going to fill my cup during this time?
So let's talk about a little bit about the confidence and identity and the emotional recovery that we have to go through after this layoff, or
Yeah.
really any termination, to be honest with you. How would you suggest someone rebuild their confidence when a layoff has made them question their value, their identity, or their professional abilities?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
would you suggest a person rebuild their confidence from that?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things, right? And in full transparency, some of these things cost money, right? So we'll talk
Ah,
about the stuff
yes.
that doesn't cost money, right? First
Right.
things first is find your people, right? You got to
Yeah.
find your people, find your
Okay.
anchors, create your community, find someone who's in the same situation. And if they're not in the same situation, find someone who can really empathize with you and hear with you. And I will say, out of my own personal circumstances, it has to be outside your house. Right. Like, so
Yes.
if you have a significant other, a roommate, a partner, right, they are not the person to go to. So you do have to find your community outside of that so you can create some of that healthy space.
Yep.
And of course, like, communities are great, but sometimes when you build that community, right, there really is a knowledge gap in that community, right? And you can't always fill that. So if you
Yeah.
feel like there's a knowledge gap, right? If you feel like I keep applying, but I'm not getting interviews, or I keep getting interviews, but I'm not making it to the second round, or I keep getting to
Yeah.
the final round, but I'm not landing the job, right? There's
Mm,
some type of knowledge gap going on, right? There's something you don't know that's happening. Could it be
right.
every star is misaligned for you? Absolutely, right? And that's a great chance, to be quite honest. But I will say the vast majority of the time, it's the same small thing that keeps popping up from interview to interview or application to application that you don't see. And
Yep.
that's when you start thinking about investing in a career coach or an
Yep.
outplacement firm or something of the sort to help you cut through that. This is not stuff we are born out of the womb knowing. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's helpful to have a career coach. I was working with
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm speaking with an executive the other day too, and she's at this pivotal point in her career where, yeah, she could go down into more like mid-level leadership, or she could go up, right, into the
Hmm.
executive realm. And she
Hmm.
said same thing. She's getting into those final interviews and she can't like close the deal. And she's like, what's going on? And we were talking about how to bring sales into the interview. Right? Like what you
Hmm.
can really be doing to sell that
Yourself.
person, show them and consult with them and really interact and show that partnership. And she was like, whoa, no one's ever told me that before. And I was like, I know, like, and I said, you know why? Like, we all know some executives who are in a job where like, how in the world did
Did they
you?
get there?
You're like,
Yes.
it's because they're really good at selling themselves. They're really
Mhm.
good at selling. They're really good at showing
Yep.
that partnership and that they can help that higher level person get to where they want to go.
Yep.
And so sometimes you just don't know.
Right.
You don't know to do those things. And that's when it's time to work with a career coach. When you're like, I'm
So
missing
true.
something. What
Yep.
is it?
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. And, I went down that road. I did a lot of contracting myself, and
Mhm.
I would apply to, permanent jobs. And I'll tell you what, I was not getting those jobs. And I
Wow.
realized why. I didn't want to be in corporate anymore. And
Yeah.
it was coming off me like, I had been sprayed by a skunk. I mean, it was, and I had to, reflect back, and I know this is what I'm giving off. I was just, do I just do my own thing? And I finally just said, I have to, because I
Yeah.
can't get over, I'm at that point where I have to do my own thing,
Yeah.
because I don't want this anymore. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
industrially organized was born, and here we are. But
Love it.
um so now let's talk about your outplacement services.
Okay.
What should someone expect if their employer does offer outplacement services? What would that look like?
Yeah, so most outplacement providers, they have a pretty standard set of offerings, right?
Hmm.
First things first is they usually offer you a career coach, right? Someone to
Right.
work with. They then usually offer you like an e-learning provider, right? The LinkedIn Learnings of the world, the Udemy,
Yes,
things of
yes.
this sort, right? Some
Hmm.
services. They might also offer workshops as well too, webinars or things that you can join live.
Uh-huh.
And those are the three base things that most organizations will offer you. There are
Yeah.
some organizations that they'll do something a little different. But the big thing you're really looking for is you're truly looking for partnership, right? So really leveraging like, okay, recognizing in yourself, nobody is born out of the womb knowing how to look for a job. Nobody.
Right.
And there are some professionals out there who study this, right? Like
Yeah.
myself. Like I'm constantly studying the job market and how to sell yourself in interviews and things of this sort. And so sometimes we need professionals to help us through that phase, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so it's just like if you're bringing a contractor in to work on your house. Could you work on it yourself? Absolutely. Could you do it yourself? Yeah, sometimes you can. And other times it just makes a lot more sense to bring someone who's
Right.
who's had more hours and time and experience in the job,
Yes,
right? And it's
yes.
perfectly acceptable. So
Yeah.
that's what most outplacement providers will offer. I will say, like at Career Candor, right? I noticed I was like, that's not enough, right? First of all, we need to be connecting people to community resources. So some things that even myself, many years working in HR, I was like, I don't know what Cobra is. I don't know how to navigate the health
Oh,
insurance marketplace. I
yes.
don't know based on like, I was very fortunate to get severance. And I was like, I don't know how long this severance is going to last me. So there are
Yes.
so many other resources that I didn't get to have. And
Mm-hmm.
so what we do at Career Candor is we bring in financial advisors to come and educate you on like
Oh,
financial planning
wow.
without a job, or like, before you cash out your 401k, let's make sure it makes sense for you.
Mm-hmm.
We bring in a health insurance broker to talk about how to navigate the health insurance marketplace and what Cobra is and
That's
whether it's a
great.
good fit for you.
Yeah.
We bring in recruiters from recruiting agencies to come in and talk about, this is what a recruiter is, this is what they do, this is how they work, this is how to best work with us. And so there's so many like different resources that I think like that I really wanted to make sure that we support the job seeker holistically, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
just in their job search, but because this is a personal event and
Yeah.
because this affects your whole life, I really
Yep.
wanted to focus on how can we support their whole lives during this really vulnerable time, right?
Right.
How can we
Right.
get them
Mm-hmm.
everything they need? So when you're working with an outplacement provider, those are the big things you should be, asking about and looking for and leveraging when you do get, knock on wood, when you do get those services.
So, what should an employee do if the company doesn't offer outplacement support, but they still need that career transition support? Maybe they need resume rewriting. Maybe they're just at a loss on what to do next because
Yeah.
they're just shocked at what just
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah, most organizations actually won't offer outplacement, and a lot of
Yeah.
that is because they don't know it's out there, and there is quite a lot of stigma that like, oh, outplacement can be very expensive and it's only for like the Fortune 500, and that's just not true, right? So with
Mm-hmm.
Career Candor, we especially focus on those small mid-sized businesses. So
Perfect.
if
Yeah.
you are getting laid off, right, and
Mm-hmm.
you received your paperwork and you look at your separation agreement, right, and you see, oh, outplacement isn't in there and I want to ask for it, you have to ask for it before you sign that
That's the
separation
key.
agreement. Because
Right.
when you sign that separation agreement, that you're telling the organization, I agree to these terms, see you later,
Right.
right? We're
Right.
going parting our ways. So do it before you sign. And one of the best things to do, you can negotiate for anything, right? At that point, like I'm not saying you'll get everything, but you can
Right.
negotiate for anything. So you can ask for more money, you can ask for, extra
Yeah.
time, you can ask
Yeah.
for outplacement. I will say a lot of people end up asking for outplacement services. And so what's really nice is you can directly go back to them and say, hey, thanks so much for sending this over. But one thing I saw was outplacement isn't in there. And you can do a couple of things. You can either just ask them, can I have outplacement services, period, right? And that's it. Or you can say, hey, I want outplacement services and I want it from this firm. We've had
Yes.
both situations, right? Where an employee went to an employer and said, you're laying me off, I want outplacement. And they looked around, they were like, who knows an outplacement provider?
Right,
And
right, right.
Career Candor showed up, but we've also had people who've gone online, done their research, found our company and said, hey, I want to work with Career Candor. Can you
Yes.
purchase outplacement services for me to help me on my next step?
I
And
love that.
here's the thing too, we also have like on Career Candor's website, we actually have a script for you to follow, whether you're going to ask via phone call or whether you're going to ask writing it out in an email. We have a script for you so that you literally can see this is exactly how you would go about asking for these services as
That's
part of your
awesome.
separation.
That's such an awesome resource because, again, you're just kind of sitting there like, okay, this happened. It's hard to be strategic in that
Yeah,
moment, which is
yeah,
why, like we said before, take 24 hours at least
yes,
before you sign it. Get your thoughts together
yeah.
and I will put the Career Candor website in the show notes. And you said you worked from small, mid, and large companies,
Yeah,
or
yeah. The only thing we won't help are those like super large enterprises. They're laying off 3,000 people at a time type of thing, right?
okay,
We'll help when they have like dozens and dozens or maybe a few hundred that they're laying off at a time. But we
gotcha.
typically, our sweet spot is those small, mid-sized businesses who don't get outplacement services without us. So
That's
that's
so
where we
cool.
typically like to serve.
That's awesome. What's one thing you wish every employee understood about layoffs before they experience one?
I think one, we touched on it before, right? It's not you. right?
Yep.
It's really
Yep.
hard because it
Yep.
feels like it's you and it's not. You have to remember the company is underperforming and it
Yep.
stinks because the company is not losing its job, right? Like the company
Right.
is not losing its livelihood, you are,
Right.
right?
Right.
But this layoff occurred because the company was underperforming, not because you
Right.
were.
No.
I will say the other thing to recognize is that, this is a place where you can have a blank slate, right? With the right community, with the
Yes.
right people around you, this really can be a blank slate
Hmm.
opportunity
Yep.
for you to move forward, right?
Yep.
For you to figure out what's there. And eventually the light at the end of the tunnel will appear. But I will say the other thing I want people to know about the layoff before it happens to them is definitely just thinking about how you can pay it forward to people who've been laid off, right? It's super
Mm.
hard, especially when
Hmm.
you're the survivor with survivor's guilt. If you see other people being laid off or something, think, okay, if I were in their shoes, what would I need? What would I want? And even just reaching out to them and saying, hey, I'm sorry to hear that this happened. Always happy to
Absolutely.
grab coffee, lunch, or things of the sort. And the connection really
Absolutely.
matters when you've been laid off. So really leverage
Absolutely.
connections and be a connection for someone.
That is so true. Be humanistic, right?
Yep.
Just be a human to other
Yep.
humans.
Exactly.
When I see, open to work or, hey, I've been laid off and I'm looking for another job, when I see that come across my LinkedIn or any of them, I'll do a repost. If
Yeah.
my
Yep.
network is, even if I don't even know you, even if we're not first
Yep.
connected, you're a connection from another connection. Yeah, I absolutely do that. Why? Because I would hope that someone would do that for me.
Yeah.
That simple.
Yeah.
So we talked about how Career Candor offers outplacement services to
Mhm.
companies and individuals if needed. What are some other services that your company offers to any outplaced employees?
Yeah, yeah. So a couple of things that we offer, of course, we talked about like the career coaching, resume reviews, interview prep.
Okay. Yep.
You get to either pick your career advisor, or you get matched with a career advisor who's there to truly partner with you throughout the
Oh, wow.
process.
Love
And we
it.
want to make sure that you get someone who's not just some random person, right? I talked about my experience, my person,
Yes.
he had no idea what I did for work, didn't understand it, right? And
Yeah.
that was a shame because when he was trying to help, he really just tried to leverage his expertise, his knowledge, and it wasn't applicable in my situation.
Right.
So we really want to make sure that you get paired with someone who understands you and understands your background.
Yeah.
But then also, the other things we do, of course, is we offer an AI resume writer to really help people on,
Oh,
how do you tailor your resume that much better, right? How do
that's
you support?
awesome.
So that way, and then it turns into a nice job tracker too. So that way, okay, you
Hmm.
customize your resume for a job, then it saves the job for you so that like you're not struggling, like, oh my God, who's this company again? Like, what resume version did I use to apply for
Right.
them?
Oh
Right.
gosh.
Don't worry about it. We've got that taken care of for you. And
Uh,
that gets you a full year of using that, right?
wow. That's
Plus, we
amazing.
also, yeah, like I'd mentioned too, we have health insurance brokers who come on, financial advisors who come in and talk. We personally introduce you to recruiters in our network as well too, to get you, on your feet, back out that door, as well as tons of webinars on like AI and applicant tracking systems and,
Yes.
how to write a good resume, how to
Big
leverage your
topic.
network, career
Yes.
planning and so forth. So when you work with us, we're really trying to focus on how can we help you as a whole person during this
Yes.
stage.
Yeah.
Even so much so in some local communities, we even offer free transportation. So we pay for public transport
Oh,
to help you get
wow.
to different jobs. So
Wow.
we really try to help out as much as we can
That's
while you're between work, while you're not bringing in the money again, and to help remind you like you're really worthy and you are going to be you are still an amazing talent and there's still so much more to come and you're still very worth it.
I love that. You really have thought of it all. And I love, it came from your experience. And, what better way to help people. You're not just you're not just making it up in your head. You've been there, done that. You know all
Yep.
the things that you had, all the things that you wish you had, all the things that are absolutely necessary. And I feel like you've
Yeah.
really thought of it all. And I absolutely love that. I think your company is so wonderful. I'm so glad that you and I connected,
Yeah,
and that
same.
we're doing this, because it is such a personal thing and people need guidance. And, anybody who's working out there in the corporate world, has this fear in the back of their mind. Will I ever be
Mm.
laid off? And
Yeah.
what do I do? They always say, have 6 months of, your
Savings
finances
and
saved or something.
yeah.
Yeah, which is great. But,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't do that.
And
And
sometimes it's not feasible,
and
right?
it's
Like
not feasible.
the
That's
world keeps
right.
getting more expensive, right?
That's
Emergencies
right.
happen.
Yes,
Sometimes that's not feasible.
right. So I think that what you offer and your company is just so amazing.
Oh, thanks, Nicole.
Yes. Well, thanks for joining me on this episode. And like I said, we are going to come together again and talk about
Yes.
companies and how they should be
Yes.
handling layoffs. And but again, I will put Career Candor's website down below. Brittany Wilson is the brain power behind that website and that company. Reach out to her or her team if you are thinking you might get laid off, or maybe you're in that situation right now and you're to the point where you don't know what to do. So you
Yeah.
need someone to assist you. Brittany's got you, folks.
Oh,
So
thanks, Nicole.
thanks again, Brittany, and we will talk very soon in our next episode.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nicole, for having me. I'm so appreciative of you. And I look forward to catching up here soon.